Clarisse LaRue has always been easy to dismiss. She's loud, aggressive, and usually standing in Percy's way. But the Percy Jackson show just made one quiet change that completely redefines her character, and if you miss it, you miss why Clarisse actually matters to the story. This isn't just about making a bully more likable. It's about turning Clarisse from background muscle into one of the most emotionally important characters in the series, and it all starts with someone the books didn't even introduce until much later. Clarisse had kind of a story arc in the Percy Jackson books, but the show is really taking her character to the next level. Season 2 is likely to be the one most focused on her, and the showrunners made one huge change that is really affecting how I see her character and how I see the show as a whole. So today, I want to talk about how introducing Chris Rodriguez in Season 2 instead of Season 4 turns Clarisse from a bit player to a main character. First off, you may be wondering who Chris Rodriguez even is. He's this guy. But in the novels by Rick Riordan, he wasn't introduced until the 4th book, The Battle of the Labyrinth. We were told that Chris was a demigod who sided with Luke before being sent into the labyrinth as a scout and subsequently being driven insane by the labyrinth. Clarisse finds him, and this is the first time that readers and Percy see a softer side of her as she tries to nurse him back to health, and she wouldn't have succeeded if it weren't for Mr. D returning right in the nick of time. Clarisse and Chris finish that 4th book together, and it's the first real relationship that we see Clarisse have. So why is it important that the show introduces Chris a full in-universe year sooner? Well, it's not important for Chris's sake, but rather for Clarisse's. Bringing him into the story 2 seasons earlier does 3 things for Clarisse. It humanizes her, and it adds greater depth to later developments in the story. There are a couple of ways that writers humanize antagonists, but one of the easiest ways to do it is to give them characters that they care about. When we see Clarisse attempt to flirt with Chris, a scene I found utterly hilarious, it shows us that she isn't a complete jerk like we may have thought based on her brief interactions with Percy. It also shows us that she has no clue what she's doing and is treating love as a war to be won. A valid approach for a daughter of Ares. By introducing Chris here and showing the audience that Clarisse does feel other emotions besides anger, the writers of the show are hopefully telling the audience that Clarisse isn't a monster or a horrible person, and that she is someone worth rooting for. She's on the right side, she's just not a nice person. This, I think, is reflected in Dior Goodjohn's performance, which is considerably less angry and a lot more justifiable than the portrayal of the character in the book, who is more of a caricature of a bully. The second thing introducing Chris earlier does is it foreshadows future events a lot better, and it allows the audience to really feel the emotional weight of those events. We know that sometime in between this episode and Season 4, Chris will desert to the side of Kronos and Luke. In the books, this happens off-page, and we don't see any reactions from Clarisse or anyone else. In fact, we know that Annabeth has been at camp for 5 years when the first book starts, so it's interesting to me that the only defector we ever really see the emotional effects of is Luke. You'd think that Annabeth would know a lot more other people that defect. The show does seem set to dive into the emotional impact a civil war like this will have, with new characters like Allison Sims examining what fighting against your friends and family can do to you. Chris being introduced before he defects, instead of after, will allow us to see how his betrayal will affect Clarisse. There's even the possibility that this happens this season during the quest. It would be so interesting to see how Clarisse would react to this kind of betrayal. Due to her lineage, we can assume that she'll be incredibly angry and resentful and possibly even want revenge, but we do know that she seems to forgive Chris once he goes insane. A fallen soldier is a fallen soldier on either side, I suppose. I think that Dior Goodjohn will portray Clarisse's reaction to Chris's defection with a little more depth than just angry. And I think that depth will continue on into later seasons, specifically after she finds Chris insane in the labyrinth. For the audience, already knowing how Clarisse feels about Chris will make this moment much more emotional. It changes from who is Chris and why should I care to no, not him. It also adds so much more to Clarisse's character as she tries fruitlessly to nurse him back to health. The fact that we know how much Chris matters to Clarisse turns an expendable side character in the reader's mind into an important interaction. In other words, because we know that Clarisse cares, we care. The other thing is that Clarisse's love does actually end up redeeming Chris from Kronos' side. After Mr. D returns in the nick of time and heals his mind, Chris joins back with the side of the gods. This honestly reflects the themes of the entire series about not giving up on family, and never giving someone up for lost. Those themes are best showcased by Annabeth and Hermes never giving up on Luke, but Clarisse's persistence about Chris really showcases it well and provides kind of an undercurrent of that theme throughout the whole series. In the end, I think it was a brilliant idea by the writing team for this Percy Jackson show to introduce Chris Rodriguez so much earlier because of how much it deepens the audience's attachment and connection with Clarisse. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if you even remembered Chris from the books. I've been Judah Eyler from Truvy Radio, and thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button so more people can see it, and if you want more Percy Jackson content just like this from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as I'll be making a lot more Percy Jackson stuff, more character-driven essays just like this one for the next few months. For now, that's all I've got, and I'll see you in the next one. Farewell, friends.